Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we are having a crisis of faith on this podcast, or at least we're discussing one, because we're talking about another fantastic, in my opinion, Season 13 episode with a huge guest star, the episode She of Little Faith. And of course, we will be discussing that together. And when I say we, I am referring to my and your co-host with the most, Richie the WizKid. How you doing today, Rich?
So we gotta determine if this episode is better than how we felt last week about it. And I know, I was very down on last week's episode where I felt like it just wasn't up to par with the way the season had been. And I got to say, Miles, after watching this most recent one, that, man, it feels a lot better. Oh, my God. Like, wow. This one just felt like it got back on track. And maybe last week's episode was just a little bump in the road. It was a speed bump to try to slow it down, but like this episode felt so much better in my opinion than last week. I'm so happy it felt good the whole way through, and good because it's a lease episode. So I do have some things I do want to bring up, but that's the point of the show, so I can't do it now. It's got to tease it for later, even though it's not that big of a deal. So I should go ahead and throw it back to you so we can get going here. The man, the myth, the pouting Thomas. It is Miles.
Thanks to the God Cam. Dude, I love a lot about this episode, and I completely agree with everything you just said, which is wild to me as I continue to look back on these IMDb ratings. I'll remind you that last week's episode was the highest. It was a higher rated episode than all of the other episodes that we have been like so fond of. So it's wild to me that, that one is just so off the mark from the rest of other people. But this one is a 7.1, which ties Hunka Hunka Burns in Love, as well as The Parent Rap, and is just 0.1 lower than Homer the Mo. And the only, there are definitely some things about this one I'll say. I'll start out by saying that I kind of don't like it when they, late in the episode are like, oh, by the way, it's a Christmas episode.
I didn't even realize that.
I'm personally a big sucker and fan of holiday-themed episodes for sitcoms. I watch Home Improvement and Roseanne's episodes for Halloween every single year. I watch a lot of the Treehouse of Horror episodes every year. I love Christmas episodes from the shows I just mentioned, as well as The Simpsons and others. Futurama has great Christmas episodes, but I don't like it when they're just kind of like, oh yeah, I guess it's appropriate that we could tie this to Christmas. And I get that they made sense with trying to convince Lisa and whatnot, but that's my biggest beef with this episode is when I think of Simpsons Christmas episodes, this one doesn't come to mind. The Bone Storm is always the one that tops my list in terms of just an incredibly well-written Christmas episode. But even the episode where the Furbies come to life is, I think, a more Christmas-centric episode than this one. Or the episode where Bart ruins Christmas by burning the house down or whatever. This one just doesn't have that Christmas energy. So
it's not supposed to, Miles, because you don't think you can celebrate it until all of a sudden Richard Gere tells us that we can.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know you should do whatever Richard Gere tells you is okay.
Yeah, but I mean, just as a Simpsons episode, though, throw the Christmas stuff out of it. It's a very fun episode. The only complaint I had about it was that I thought she was already Buddhist.
Oh, interesting.
Every time she's been at church for the last couple seasons, I've been like, I guess she's just doing it for...
When did you think she became Buddhist?
I guess because I've seen this episode so many times, I assumed that it had already happened. Maybe...
Gotcha.
This is going to sound
that's
terrible.
Actually something they're going to talk about in the commentary a little bit. So I'm curious, maybe this is just a mismemory, which is super easy to happen on the show because of the flexible reality. I'm not calling you out, but I did not have that. I knew that she was a vegetarian, and I know those are both as obnoxious as Buddhists, but like.
I think that was my issue, is that I guess in my mind, when she became a vegetarian, she also became Buddhist, which is terrible to say.
Dude, honestly, I just made that joke, and as I sit here and think about it, I think Buddhists are arguably the least offensive religion because they just do their own thing and search for inner peace, and they don't like try to like force their shit upon anybody.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean,
they just like encourage you to find enlightenment on your own path. Like, I'm kind of cool with that religion, honestly.
Yeah, like it kind of makes you want to go Buddhist while you're watching the episode. And like Marge, oh man, but like that's the whole point. We got to get into this episode, man. So I guess we'll save some of it for the rest of the podcast.
So I do want to note that this is our 311th podcast. So I'm hoping that we can come original with something and, just kind of like do a nice breakdown of the episode She of Little Faith, which originally aired on December 16th in the year 2001. I'll also note this is the last episode in 2001. So when we come back next time for a Simpsons episode, we are on to 02, our sophomore year of high school, Richie. Can you believe it?
We might want to make this podcast just go for 311 minutes and try to beat our record.
The chalkboard gag on this one, or I'm sorry, let me slow down a little bit, because She of Little Faith is actually based on the Bible verse Matthew 16:8, which when Jesus perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because ye have brought no bread? So they obviously took like the little middle part of that and trimmed it for this episode, which works well. I didn't come here
for religious education, Miles.
Sorry, dude. You know how I like to get behind a pulpit.
I was laughing my butt off when the church catches on fire in this one, because I was like, I bet Miles is having so much fun with this.
I like that this episode just puts the commercialism of church out in the on Front Street, because that's how they all actually operate. They're just not as obvious about it, which is worse. I'd rather you be obvious and upfront about things.
I was.
By the way, this podcast is sponsored by Chick-fil-A, which is why they're not here today, because it's Sunday.
I was having conversations like this with my friends the other day, where I was like, "Wouldn't you I wish advertisement would cut the bullshit and just advertise the way things are. Like if you put a porn star selling it was like laundry detergent or something like that. It was. I was like, I would be more inclined to buy it if you weren't quit hiding all this stuff and just.
Yeah, just give me the real deal breakdown. Like, this product is going to work moderately well, and we're only overcharging you a little bit. That's what I want to hear a spokesperson say. This all reminds me, I don't usually do this, but I don't give a shit. I'm doing it right now. I have a joke that I love telling on stage, and it's essentially that I tried to buy alcohol at my 7-Eleven, my local 7-Eleven the other day, and they told me that they're not allowed to sell beer because there's a church right across the street. And I thought that was messed up, because if anything, wouldn't the world be a better place if churches weren't allowed to sell bullshit across the street from 7-Elevens? That's a wrap. See you next week.
I don't understand. What? So they lost out on a sale.
Yeah, so that is my joke.
How is that separation of church and
the truth? Right, the truth of the matter is there are laws in the city that I live in that do not allow stores to sell alcohol within X amount of feet of a church, and they built a 7-Eleven across the street from this church that has been there forever. So that 7-Eleven does not sell alcohol. They sell soda and cigarettes and Jewel pods. Well, not anymore, but when they could legally. And you can buy weed out front, or crack probably, from a dude that's there commonly, but you cannot buy alcohol.
And there's some states where you can buy actual liquor inside of 7-Elevens, not beer, but liquor.
I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you. But yeah, this last episode of 2001, the chalkboard gag is I do not have a cereal.
Nice segue.
Thanks, man. I do not have a cereal named after me. We get a couch gag, which I think might be new, or at least I don't remember it. But all the Simpsons are on a giant slot machine, and each one of them comes up individually, which is not a win, mind you. Somehow it does spit out some gold coins, though.
I want to point out that this started off where I was not doing good. They forgot about Maggie last week at the end of the episode when they were in Burns' Manor watching the video of Waylon Smithers Sr. and Maggie's not in the couch gag, so I don't know.
Yes, she is. There's 5. There's all 5 of them.
No, it was 4 of them and then a jackpot.
Are you sure? Are you certain? I could have sworn I saw all 5. Oh my goodness!
I saw the 4 Simpsons. At least I think so. Now. Oh my gosh!
No, did we just Mandela ourselves? Like,
pretty sure
that's
just 4 of them. Maybe they want to leave the baby out of the gambling. I don't know, but they had the other 2 kids. But Bart did own his own casino at one time, so I'm pretty sure Maggie wasn't there. Long story short.
Okay, here's the crazy part. We're both technically right. There are 5, but it's Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and a flaming number 7.
That's what I was just trying to. That's what it was. Maggie was gone. I thought it was jackpot, but yeah, it was a number 7.
Yeah, you're right. I just looked it up, and I just saw 5 squares, so I guess I assumed. My bad. You know what assuming does.
Makes an ass out of you, but not me.
Something like that. We open up with a old movie, The Planet from Outer Space, a science fiction
rain delay
film
theater
in the 50s. Basically, it's like just one of those. It kind of gave me, oh my God, Visitors from Planet 9. What is that?
Planet 9 from Outer Space.
There you go. Yeah, Planet 9 from Outer Space.
Fantastic movie.
It's fantastically bad is the idea, because I do love in this episode, like we see there's like astronauts and they're worried about the space air entering the hull, but they just put on their goggles, which somehow
on your goggles.
And since they went through a stressful situation but are now breathing comfortably through their goggles, the captain actually lights up a cigarette.
Yeah. Everything about it was fantastic. Like, just loved it.
But after he looks out the like monitor or the periscope equivalent of a spacecraft, he's like, oh my God, it's a monster from space. But it's very clearly just a dog on a fishing line with a helmet on. And as Bart points out, if you look closely, it's very clearly a male dog.
But it's bad that you could tell that.
As soon as this scene breaks, we cut to commercial and we see a what we believe to be a real life colonel. Hi, I'm Colonel Chet Manners, 5-time space shuttle alternate.
Loser.
Would you like to boldly go where people like me, but not me, have gone before? Then get out the Orbit King with yaw control like you've never seen. And he's holding up a model rocket, which is something that I used to be way into as a kid, for what it's worth. I discovered these at some camp I went to, probably nerdy-ass science camp or something equally lame. But either way, I had a good time, and I discovered model rockets, so I got into them for a while. Either way,
I built a model rocket back in the day and tied a toy to it that overweight it, and it came right at us.
Nice.
Oh, I had a cast on my foot.
Bart, I think you've actually told that story on this podcast. Weirdly enough, like where you guys run away. Yeah. Bart verifies. Hey, Lisa's dad's credit card number is still 578-43653-434-10709.
You know it is.
I like how she just like calmly like reassures him in that manner. It's pretty funny.
I think to me, it's one of those things where Bart's bragging that he knows dad's number, and that's why Lisa calls him on it. Like, you know it is.
Yeah, that's fair. That's completely fair. I would agree with that.
That means that they also both know their dad's credit card number.
Yeah. I will say I really like jokes like this because as soon as we see Bart order, we immediately cut to 6 to 8 weeks later, which is always funny because that's like how long it's estimated when you order something online, or at least that's how it used to be back in the day when you do like a phone order, which honestly, is that even still a business model? Like now that the internet is around as much, like can people still order over the phone? We
should open a vintage ordering service.
If you call right now, we'll double your vintage order.
You want to wait 6 to 8 weeks to something? Man, we got a business model for you.
I mean, even Wish, it takes longer than that, but you order online.
I don't know. I ordered something off Amazon the other day, and it took 1 day. So, that was way too long, too.
I ordered something the other evening, and I got it the next morning, to the point that when something arrived at my doorstep, I'm like, what the hell is this? I didn't order anything. And then I looked, and I'm like, oh, I ordered this last night.
It was too slow and fell out of your short-term memory.
Pretty much, yeah. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and stop before we move any further because this is, the 6 to 8 weeks later portion of the episode. But before we go on to that, let me say that the commentary track on this one was very full, but still informative. It featured showrunner now. We're still in that transitional period between Al Jean and Mike Scully. But Al Jean, the showrunner, was on this commentary along with John Frank, Max Cross, Tom Gamble, Steve Moore, Matt Selman, the voice of Milhouse, Pamela Hayden, and Bill Freiberger, who is actually the writer of this episode. Bill Freiberger had met Al Jean working on the show Teen Angel together, where they actually had a conversation about model rockets. And that ended up being like, oh, that would make a great Simpsons episode. And when Al had an idea to have this episode essentially where Lisa becomes a Buddhist, he thought that would be a great fit to kind of like get them into it. So he called him up and got him to come and write this episode.
Nice. Smart guy, that Al Jean, I hear.
I think that's fair to say for sure. I'll go ahead and also say I wasn't sure where I was going to put this in, but I'm pretty excited to talk about it because it's kind of interesting. This episode is the episode from this season that was nominated for an Emmy, which usually, from my understanding, is when the Emmy nominations go around, they'll pick like one episode for whatever reason to nominate it for certain things. And unfortunately, this episode did not win. And it's because it lost to an episode of Futurama. And that episode of Futurama was actually the Roswell episode where Fry goes back in time and finds out he's his own grandpa, which is a fantastic episode.
That's a tough one to go against.
Matt Groening had a fantastic quote from this night because he basically said that having both shows nominated gave him the opportunity to be bitter either way.
That's par for the course.
But yeah, what an episode to lose to, right? Arguably, I think people often, I think most people have that episode in their top 5 episodes of Futurama. Many probably have it at number 1.
Probably so, yep.
Yeah.
Not my number 1, but we've talked about that maybe on a different podcast.
It's not my number 1 either, but I do think it would probably make my top 5, and absolutely it would make my top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to go and look back at it. My episode is the dog episode that we talk about.
As your top episode?
Mm-hmm.
That's surprising that with how the feels that it hits you with, that it doesn't just make you a little bit upset enough to bump it out of your top 1. Mine's Godfellas.
I think it makes me upset. And I remember, I think we actually did this on the show. I think I did Godfellas at number 2 because I also love that episode. But I don't think there's been an episode of an animated show that has like emotionally moved me more than that dog episode of Futurama. So while it's not always a positive thing, I think the emotional weight of that episode holds it in the number 1 spot for me.
And it's what all of our, like my dog does that when I leave for work every day, and she's in the same spot I leave her in when I get back. Essentially, it's terrible.
Please pardon me for 6 to 8 weeks while I cry over the thought of losing my dogs. But in the episode of The Simpsons we're dealing with, we do cut to 6 to 8 weeks later where Homer is actually flossing his teeth and singing a parody of Devo's Whip It. It's like, if you eat a steak, you must floss it.
When you have a ribeye steak, you must floss it. Oh, that meatloaf tasted great. You must floss it. Now floss it. Floss it good.
So yeah, he's doing that.
Which already I was like best episode ever. I mean, well, better than last week's at least.
And that's when Bart walks by with his new model kit and asks Homer for help, and Homer actually agrees to do it. Bart has to do some convincing, and we cut to Homer in the backyard applying heavy amounts of glue to like the rockets, like fenders or whatever they're called. What are those called?
Why would you say something like that? Yeah, the fins for the rocket. We'll just say the fins. But
yeah. I love Milhouse is like, I didn't know your dad was so interested in science.
Science?
He didn't mean science, Dad. He said pie pants.
Pie pants.
So when Bart first says this line, my brain jumps to the pants in which you eat pie in, but Homer's reaction actually makes me think that these are in fact pants made out of pie.
Agreed.
We cut to the launch countdown where Homer is doing, it's on his watch. It actually says T minus, and then it counts from 3, 2, 1, 0. But unfortunately, instead of rocketing into the air, the rocket explodes. And so forcefully, actually, that it knocks Milhouse's like eyebrows off of his foreheads, and it almost makes like sideburns for Bart.
I feel like that his mom had the same eyebrows.
Maybe it's very possible.
But I do have a problem with Homer in this because any dad worth his salt will let the kid hit the button. Like, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
He'll be the one to launch it.
But it doesn't feel out of character for Homer to be the one to want to push the button here either.
And that's the dichotomy of the situation there.
I would agree with that. We see that it cuts to Homer with round 2, about to launch another rocket, giving a speech. The word unblowupable is thrown around a lot these days, but I think I can say with confidence, boom! And another explosion. Milhouse this time doesn't have his eyebrows blown off, but he still has quite the look on his face.
And I love the Homer's follow-up. Okay, that shows you what could potentially happen.
And as Homer's trying to cover his tracks here, we see over the backyard fence, a rocket flies beautifully straight up into the sky. And Homer's like, what was that?
Greetings from Nettie. That was like...
It's like Kennedy Space Center, but it's Nettie Space Center. The other one's like Cape Canaveral.
There's so many D's in that word. That's what she said. That it's just so difficult to say.
Well, we know how Ned likes to bring the D.
Mm-hmm. And howdy. Hey, that was another one. But the Nettie Space Center on Cape Flandaval.
I got this. Tough time. Greetings from Nettie Space Center on Cape Flandaval. We noticed your skyrotechnics and thought we'd join in. Oh, and look at that. It's a perfect landing. And Flanders' rocket literally lands itself back in the box it came in and even folds the flap as it closes.
But like even the parachute even folds back into the like it's perfect. Like you can never do that again.
And Milhouse and Bart are blown away, but Homer's kind of frustrated. Milhouse is like, wow, did you see that yaw control?
I have eyes, don't I?
Which this is hilarious because it's also a callback to the commercial earlier where like one of like the pop-ups like 90s style or 2000 style in this case, like big like energy moves was total yaw control.
It was fantastic. I like the callback.
But you know how Homer doesn't like to be beat by Flanders, and he's willing to go to a lot of means to make sure that doesn't happen. In this case, he calls his old roommates from that time he attended Springfield University. And those three nerds are able to build a very impressive rocket. And Homer is immediately like, I would like to thank you nerds for helping me out.
Well, then could you stop calling us nerds?
Okay, dweeb, wonk, spaz, it's all good. I don't think Homer gets it.
I mean, he did exactly what they asked, though, to be fair.
He did. Yeah, he did. And like the nerds are actually having a really good time with his model rocket. And like they think they're about to get to experience the fun. But as soon as Homer calls for attention, he asks all of the dweebs to get off of the launching area, please.
Which even Milhouse walks away too.
We cut to them getting the astronaut ready, which I'll be honest, I thought this was a guinea pig when I first saw it. I even made a joke in our like little note for this episode about it, like no guinea pigs were hurt in this episode, but I'm pretty sure it's Nibbles the school hamster, and I was just mistaken.
Well, why would you ever make a mistake like that, Miles? That's terrible.
I know. I shouldn't. Definitely not qualified to have a podcast about this show based on that mistake.
We might make it to like the top 25.
Yeah, but never the top 20. That won't happen. Yeah, for sure. We see that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and talk about something that I found really interesting. It's something that I've brought up before on this podcast. We mentioned going back to our first episode, this is the first season post 9/11. And from the commentary track, we get a really good example of some of the changes that were made to the show, because this episode was actually produced or written, I should say, prior to the season 12 closing. So this was a holdover that they had already had like well before 9/11. And when they came back into the studios, which is post 9/11, when they were reviewing this episode, they actually had a joke in here originally where that the rocket that the good rocket that Homer had the nerds build, you'll notice that it had his initials HJS written on the side of it. There was actually a joke in here that was either replaced or at least similar to the joke with the like guy who was like a bum in the alley who gave up wine and then immediately tossed it to another guy who immediately became a bum. They were going to do another joke where the rocket was actually found and apprehended by the police. And they end up arresting a man by the name of Hasim something Middle Eastern sounding, essentially. I can't remember the full name, but the first name was Hasim. And basically the joke was if there was ever anything that looked like this, it would be considered a terrorist attack, and everybody would think that's hilarious. And in a pre 9/11 world, that was the zeitgeist. That was the truth of the sense of humor at the time. That would have very much been made into a joke. Honestly, I think it was even made into jokes on movies around that time, if you go back and look. But but in this case, the writers basically kind of saw like, oh, in a post 9/11 world, this joke really isn't as funny as we once thought it was, and they scrapped it. But I mentioned at the beginning of the season that I think that we're going to find that there's at least going to be for a little while a little bit of a sense of change that happens sometimes on the show. And I think this is a really interesting example of it.
Absolutely. It's tread lightly there. It's a good thing they have people that review the episodes too.
Well, I mean, obviously, from going in from writing to production, they're gonna get reviewed and whatnot. But yeah, I think it was very smart of them to scrap that joke. So back to the fun of this episode. Just like the chimpanzees that we, as NASA sent into space in the past, Bart is launching his pet hamster in this toy rocket. Before he's ready, the hamster is saying goodbye to his hamster wife, who's dressed just like Jackie Kennedy, by the way. And Marge points out, oh, he's leaving her with 5 babies.
She already ate 3.
Oh, well, that is sensible. We get some emotional music playing as the hamster rides the final elevator to the launch room.
It does the full thing, dude. Like, he's in an astronaut helmet, and he does, like, the slow walk. Like, most hamsters would run away, but, like, this dude knew to walk straight.
He knows what's up,
in the grass, yeah.
And Homer speaks to Bart, son, we're about to break the surly bonds of gravity and punch the face of God. We get another countdown all the way from 5 to 1. Countdown is what Homer declares as the rocket launches with such force that we see the hamster's face actually stretching, exposing his skull. It does a giant arc across the sky. This is where we see the scene I just spoke of, where one man, a bum in the alley drinking wine, literally in the gutter, sees this beautiful moment and decides to give up drinking, tossing his wine into the air, where a well-dressed man in a suit catches it and decides, oh, hey, I'm going to lay down in this gutter and start drinking.
It was a beautiful moment.
But the rocket does start to drift off course. Homer tries to set it straight by radioing Nibbles to hit the blue button in front of him. However, Nibbles instead sees the red eject button and is very quick to jump on that idea. And we see Nibbles parachuting safely to the ground, but the unmanned rocket is now flying directly at the church. Not to worry, though. Homer does have a plan.
A gun. as with that'll probably trend out eventually at one point, but yeah, he's got a plan to take up arms and shoot the rocket out of the sky.
He literally pulls out a shotgun and starts shooting wildly, and instead of shooting the rocket out of the sky, he's just shooting holes into the church.
Is that what he hit?
Yeah, he's literally shooting the church. It's causing flames and smoke to start billowing out sometime. And Marge comes out seeing the chaos that he's caused and declares, Homer, this is the worst thing you've ever done.
No, to be clear, Homer does not shoot the church. The rocket goes into the church.
No, he literally shoots the church, bro. He's shooting at the rocket, but he misses, and he shoots out like multiple windows in the church itself. You can see visible shotgun shots happening, and then the rocket hits it.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just random misfire, and then The rocket went into the church.
He shoots out the church and shoots it with a rocket. It's both of those things.
Oh, it's a bad situation here.
After Marge declares it's the worst thing you've ever done, though, Homer is like, you say that so much, it's lost all meaning. And that might be true, but that does bring us to the end of our first act, which clocks in at 5 minutes and 42 seconds, which makes me think that our second act is going to be really, really short because I saw the timestamp on it earlier, but we'll see if I'm right. We open our second act with the church council all meeting. It's Marge, Ned, Kearney, Jasper, Mrs. Skinner, and the Lovejoys. They are convening in the shadows of the now ruins of their church, trying to figure out how they might be able to afford the repairs.
Yes, barring some sort of miracle, it is going to be quite expensive.
And then we see him looking upward, like towards heaven, trying to see if anything's going to happen. And when nothing does, he's like very begrudgingly like, all right, we'll help ourselves yet again. They decide to go and try to come up with some fundraising ideas. Marge suggests David Bowie, but he's like, no, he's done enough for the church. Anyone else?
For this church.
Yeah, true.
So he's done enough for this church.
And just then a horned and very eerie figure falls in. We see a shadow first, and it turns out it's not the devil, but it's close. It's Mr. Burns, who has his hair showing his horns in this case.
Which I want to bring back that, like, we were talking a few weeks ago where I said, yeah, eventually I was wondering if they would keep the new figure of Burns, where he doesn't quite have that hunchback to say, but yeah, they're back to that one. I was wrong.
Only whenever they need him to look nice.
Mm-hmm.
Burns declares that he could help the church if they just let them run it like a business. But Ned points out that, while it's a kind offer, Mr. Burns, the buzz around town is that you're, well, evil.
Oh, that's just a skip rope rhyme. Believe me, the Lord's going to go for this in a big way. Now, who's with me?
And Lovejoy is reluctant, but agrees that they have no choice.
Excellent.
And a crucifix immediately falls from the wall of the church and hits Burns on the head. He looks up and starts angrily cursing out the Lord.
Oh, you'll get yours.
Mr. Burns introduces Lindsay Nagel, who he says, despite the skirt, she's going to be able to help you out business-wise, which is just basically Burns being stuck in the past.
But I mean, the right woman for the job, right anybody for the job.
Sure. They're going to start by getting some ad space rented out, and we asked the Reverend how he feels about wearing a robe sponsored by Fatso's Hash House. He's like, conflicted.
Too bad. You've already signed the deal.
Actually, Mr. Burns, he hasn't.
Oh, well, we highly value your input. Until you sign the deal.
We basically do a little montage here where we see just tons of changes are being made to the church. There's advertisements, there's statues, there's all sorts of stuff. Lisa seems concerned, but Lindsay Nagel just, very calmly reassures her, we're just rebranding the church. The old church was skewing pious. We prefer a faith-based emporium teeming with impulse buy items.
I feel like I want to throw up, Lisa says.
Then my work here is done. And we actually cut to 3 weeks later where the church is now completely overdone with advertisements. There's lots and lots of ways to spend money, we'll say. And actually, one of the things here from IMDb, there's a money changing station in there. And that is actually a direct reference to the Bible, which basically refers to the cleansing of the temple when Jesus threw the merchants and money changers out of the temple, which is a story reported in all 4 Gospels of the New Testament. Jesus objected to turning a holy place of worship into a house of trade and a den of thieves. So that is a direct joke based on the Bible. I feel like I lost my co-host. I hope everything is okay. In the meantime, you with me, homie?
I totally, definitely, probably agree with everything that was just said.
Wow, yeah, you kind of left me hanging on that one, dude. Is everything okay?
You can probably hear the noise in the background. That is the new little contraption Richie has to keep checking his blood sugar without checking it, and my phone keeps going off because my blood sugar is having like a quick spike down. So I needed to basically go quickly chug 2 cans of juice.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm so glad that you were here to hear my thoughts from IMDb. Very good insight. You're doing a wonderful job as co-host, as always.
Well, you do say I do it better than any. I gave you the keep going sign.
When everything when Lisa walks in, you can see that there's like just a bunch of stuff that literally disgust her, from the ads to the picture opportunity where you can be Jesus at the Last Supper. Bart is taking advantage of this while doing all sorts of silly faces, and Marge points out, Bart, do at least one smiling so we can send it to Grandma.
Oh.
The one improvement that I am way on board with, this is like the XD theater at Cinemark or wherever you see movies, because they've updated the pews and now they're like lounge chairs, like the deluxe loungers, and they do look quite nice and will even fit a man like comic book guy.
Or at the time, Miles' favorite director of all time.
Kevin Smith, absolutely. I don't know if he's my favorite director of all time, but he's definitely up there, and I knew who you were referring to. He's made some of my favorite films for sure. And he used to be very fat.
It got you to get it.
Yeah. This is where your joke from earlier. We see that there's actually installed a Jumbotron, and while Lisa is pouting and complaining, Marge warns her that she's on the God cam, and it shows up that she's a pouting Thomas, which everyone else thinks is hilarious, and it's pretty funny. We'll be fair.
Yeah, for sure.
Lovejoy is still delivering the sermon just like he always does. And Lord, please remember our infirm parishioners, especially Mrs. Glick, who's recovering from hip surgery. And now let us rise.
I want to point out that I thought Mrs. Glick had died a few seasons ago. Like, I thought they made some kind of announcement at one point.
You know, sometimes they think that a person has died, but they've actually just been very still for a very long time.
Or it's the multiverse of Simpsons. Or it plays into the whole thing of that there is no linear timeline on The Simpsons, which in fact would make perfect sense because they never age. So, it all plays in together, Miles. I love it all. It's fantastic.
Nagel and Burns are in like a back room kind of watching over everything, and they're arguing about if he's going to say the line, and Burns is very confident while Nagel is not. But we cut back just in time to see Lovejoy say, and think Crazy Larry, whose big screen TV prices are insane, ain.
You can tell he's very disgusted with himself as he says it.
You can tell that he's not happy at all, for sure. And he even has to introduce he's like, we're going to have a guest speaker to talk about the book of deliciousness or something like that, a special sermon on deliciousness. And he calls out the Noid, who is a Domino's pizza mascot back in the 90s, which I'm actually looking just to kind of shed some light on how popular this character was at one time. This was just a mascot for a pizza company, but he got so big that they actually made a Nintendo Entertainment System video game that released on March 16th, 1990. I remember playing it as a kid. One of my friends had it, and it was actually really dope. But that's the height of popularity that this character had, though. This was 11 years after his video game, so he's probably on the decline.
I want to point out, as Miles did, we are both having our senior moments in this, because as you say, I've told that story on this podcast before. You, my friends, have also told that story.
Have I talked about the Noid before?
Yeah.
I don't remember. It doesn't count.
He's been on The Simpsons before.
I'm going to tell it again next week. Yeah, that's all that means. Is that's been on The Simpsons. That's been on The Simpsons.
No, he has.
Before.
Yeah. So It all tracks.
It tracks for sure. This is the breaking point for Lisa, though. She's done. She can't handle the commercialism all of it, and she literally screams out, "That's it!"
Quiet, Lisa.
Is that your diabetes alarm?
That's the I'm dying alarm right there. But
die on your own time, sir. Give us 45 minutes.
45 minutes, sir. Everyone in the store is looking at you.
Additionally, for on top of the 40 we've already done, for what it's worth. I love that Homer calls it a store here. He's like, everyone in the store is looking at it. To be fair, you can buy a lot of stuff. They should take a good look at themselves and what their church has become.
Lisa, it's still the same basic message. We've just dressed it up a little.
Like the whore of Babylon?
I thought that was a good viewpoint of everybody in the church doing it. But
it was.
Made Miles cry. Yeah. That is a false analogy.
No, it's not. It's apt. Apt. And I don't know why. That cracks me up so much. And Lisa's like screaming apt on top of her pew. Don't you see what Mr. Burns has done to this church?
He's restored it from nave to narthex.
He supersized the pews for the Zaftig believer.
He's put ice in the urinals.
How would she know?
Yeah, that's what I was like. Whoa.
So this actually was a weird part in their commentary, I'll say, that they brought up, and actually kind of leads to a little bit of a sad story, I will say. They talked in the commentary about how there's a bunch of fans online that essentially pointed to this moment as being proof that Patty is gay because she would know there's ice in the urinals. But I'm like, even if Patty was a lesbian, which she is, they come out and declare later, she wouldn't be going to the men's room. Like there still wouldn't be urinals there. So that felt weird to me. And that opened us a discussion about the internet in general and message boards and fans and things of that nature. And Bill Freiberger, I believe his name was. Is that right? Yeah. Bill Freiberger, who was the writer of this episode, said that he'd been writing for a while. And when the internet launched, he was actually really excited because he was thinking of like when these show message boards launched. When he was a kid, he was such a big fan of TV. And he was like, oh man, I would love to go and like talk to the people that made the show to ask them questions. So like when these things first launched, he would make an effort to go to these fan pages and like interact with the fans and answer questions and all that good stuff. But he basically said that people online were constantly so hateful about everything that he just had to stop going to those websites because it would just bum him out. And like, so he had this like very pure motivation as a writer of a show to like be able to interact with people and like, go and talk to them. And people are such assholes that he's like, nope, can't do that.
That's okay, Miles. Because as we all know, that would be as far as it went on the internet at that point, right? 2001.
That was the worst of the internet. That's as bad as it ever got. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you pointed that out. Lisa agrees that those are all wonderful things, that they cost the church its soul. And I, for one, will not be a part of it. And as she walks out, I love that we get the squeaky voice teen ask her, do you want your hand stamped so you can come back in?
No, I'm leaving this church forever.
And she slams the door. Everyone's upset. Well, Homer, not really. He's like, Marge's like, oh no.
I don't know how to feel.
You should be very upset.
Got it. How was that?
A little much. Homer tries to adjust. Marge is coaching Homer. That brings us to the end of our second act. Only 10 minutes and 27 seconds. Which means that was like a 4.5 minute act.
Yeah, and it felt very, very awkward. And honestly, I too also felt awkward, as I just said about myself a second ago. So twice, I too feel awkward. Because we got 12 minutes left? and it made me like pause the episode and look because I felt like it was just maybe I was reading it wrong. So
probably closer to like 10, 10
and
and a half, but still, like, it's weird that they rushed the second act quite a bit, it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And we still haven't seen our like mega star guest star yet either.
Me?
Exactly.
Dude, that thing's paying
your
for
diabetic
itself,
alarm has better comedic timing than you do.
That thing is the star of this episode.
We're going to talk about that in the production notes. When you listen to the commentary for this podcast, it's just going to be me reaming Richie for being like, bro, you can't turn off your fucking cell phone during the recording of this episode.
That thing, like, I'm just going to have to start straight up turning the phone off all the way because that thing, you can't turn it off at all. I've got rid of, when I first got this thing, I got rid of all of the like notifications except for the max high and the max low because you can't. And a lot of it was for my sleep.
It seems like it's relatively important to your health, so I guess we'll let it slide.
Yeah.
We opened up our third act. We opened up our third act with Lisa praying, which seems odd considering, her situation, but I get it. Lord, I'm not turning my back on you. I just need to find a temple that's free of corruption. And we pan out to see that Marge is actually hiding on the other side of the bed.
Why do you have to be so different? Always making a big deal out of everything.
Mom, I know it's you. I can't believe you're eavesdropping on my prayers.
Oh, honey, I'm worried about your soul. I want at least one person from this family to go to heaven.
I still believe in God. I just think there's another path to him. Or her.
Her? Oh, she's just kidding, Mr. Lord.
And this opens up a spiritual quest for Lisa. She starts studying books of theology, Zagat's Guide to World Religions, and she's just like having a crisis of faith.
Still looking for a new faith?
Yep.
Hey, how about one of those religions where you eat a human heart?
No.
How about Methodist?
No! Look, I'm not just going to pick a religion that seems cool. I'm going to pick one that's right for me.
How about Judaism? When you turn 13, cha-ching!
That's true, dude. I've worked a few murder mystery shows for bat mitzvahs, and man, those kids have the right childhood, I'm saying.
Do they ever do what Bart's done before where he like folds up a little bit of wad of cash and sticks it in your pocket and pats you?
I wish, but no.
No.
Lisa decides she needs to go clear her head and go for a walk. And as she's walking by, she's going to various temples. But I think this is a scene where like basically she's seeing all these neon lights advertising for everything from like Episcopalian to Amish.
The Amish one just absolutely cracks me up. Yeah.
She does finally stumble upon a Buddhist temple, however, and intrigued, she goes in to see Lenny and Carl there, and she's surprised that they're in fact Buddhists.
Lenny and Carl, you guys are Buddhist. How surprising! No, I'm just out of that last part.
I'm glad that you read the same line I just did, but they reply with, "Oh yeah, if I didn't have inner peace, I'd go completely psycho on all you guys all the time."
That's Carl.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking for a new faith, one that isn't so materialistic.
And this is where our guest star enters the fold. Richard Gere is raking a Zen garden, and he declares, well, you've come to the right place. Buddhism teaches that suffering is caused by desire.
Richard Gere?
The world's most famous Buddhist.
Well, what about the Dalai Lama?
And Carl hasn't even heard of him. Lenny hadn't ever heard of him, but Carl's like, the 14th incarnation of the Buddha, Avalokiteshvara.
Who's Buddha?
So Lenny might not be the most enlightened Buddhist, we'll say. But Gere goes on to explain, it's a good thing Buddha teaches freedom from desire, because I've got the desire to kick your ass. So a couple things we need to talk about real quick from the commentary in general. They brought up the fact that Lenny and Carl have definitely been in the Springfield church before. So what gives? And there's definitely a flexible reality with that as well. But as we know, that being a Buddhist would not necessarily prevent you from attending another church service. So they have that going for them. But they also just admitted on the commentary, yeah, people are as religious as we need them to be week to week. I get it. They also talked about Richard Gere, who recorded his lines with Al Jean from New York City, where he lived at the time. Once again, they brought up about just how great of a guest he was. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was doing this for his daughter because his daughter was such a huge fan of the show. He wanted to make
it the stepdaughter.
It didn't specify, but it just basically said that he was doing this for his daughter so that, you know, she would love him or whatever. But he was fantastic, and he was absolutely willing to make fun of himself. He was willing to make fun of Buddhism. He had two requests that, like, if they were going to make jokes about it, that's fine, but they needed to portray Buddhism accurately. And he specifically wanted Lisa Simpson at some point in the show to say "free Tibet" because that was a big thing that, you know, he was passionate about at the time. So his two, again, make fun of him all you want to, make fun of his religion all you want to, just make sure that you're portraying his religion accurately and that character says "free Tibet" at least once. That's, I think, very, very reasonable guest star negotiating.
Yeah, because this dude was massive, you know.
This dude is at the height of his, like, stardom at this point. 2001, this is right after, like, Primal Fear came out. This is, like, when he is still a heartthrob in a lot of communities. Yeah, he's on top of the world at this point. He's gotten past those weird rumors about the gerbils that, like, plagued his career for a while.
Which is weird because there's one in this episode.
Well, it was either a hamster or a guinea pig, depending on who you ask. But yeah, again, always cool to hear these mega stars just being really great to work with.
Very cool indeed. It's cool that he got what he wanted too. Like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah. So Lisa says that looking for a legion that will bring her inner peace, and that, you know, prompts Richard Gere to give her a pamphlet that introduced her to the central teachings. And there's some more jokes from Lenny and Carl here about, like, they're, like, naming movies he's been in, like, what was it? Turning to More Earthly Concerns. Carl asks Richard if he's really did all those sit-ups in Officer and a Gentleman.
And Gere says, nope. They just filmed one and then replayed it 1,000
times. Lisa learns that Buddhism means that good actions lead to happiness while evil actions bring on unhappiness. Instead of emphasizing creator gods, Buddhism stresses the search for enlightenment. And that's all that Lisa needs to hear. She is ready to declare herself a Buddhist, and she literally does by screaming out the window, "I'm a Buddhist!" Until she startles a flock of trees and the Flanders next door.
How do you startle a flock of trees?
A flock of birds out of a tree, excuse me.
Miles.
Lisa screams so loud that she's a Buddhist, and Ned actually is hearing this and very concerned.
My Satan sense is tingling. Into the root cellar, boys.
When can we come out?
Maybe never.
Yay! Rod and Todd couldn't be more excited about hiding in the storm cellar. Or the root cellar, excuse me.
As long as it's got video games, I'm good. And Diet Coke.
The next day at the breakfast table, Homer is saying, "So you think you know better than this family, huh? Well, as long as you're in my house, you'll do what I do and believe what I believe."
And then the camera pans out and you see that he's talking to Bart.
You thought that this was a discussion about Lisa's religion, but it actually turns out that Homer just wants Bart to butter his bacon.
And Bart says, "Yes, father," not even Homer.
Very,
yes, father.
Very strange for him. Just during this interaction, Lisa breaks down, "Mom, Dad, my spiritual quest is over."
Hold that thought. Bacon up that sausage, boy.
Dad, my heart hurts. Oh, and he wraps a slice of bacon around a sausage link and then eats it.
That sounds fantastic. I'm a Buddhist.
What? That's it. No more chat rooms for you. Marge is literally trying to bribe Lisa back to being a Christian, but she's not taking it. Lisa's conversion has, in fact, been declared. And Richie, you mentioned that you thought this had already happened earlier. They talk about it a little bit on the commentary, and they don't really know why this happened per se, because when Lisa became a vegetarian, you'll remember that Paul McCartney actually requested that. That was like Richard Gere requesting that they, accurately portray Buddhism and free Tibet. Paul McCartney was very, very into vegetarianism and wanted Lisa to, be a vegetarian as well. And once they made Lisa a vegetarian, Lisa remained a vegetarian. That was one of the few things that hold on. And this is another one of those cases. In this episode, Lisa becomes a Buddhist, and moving forward, Lisa will continue to be a Buddhist. And that's why, when you participate in Simpsons trivia and have various things come up, Lisa is commonly referred to as a Buddhist. But according to the commentary, this is where it all began.
All right. Fair enough. I guess I misremembered.
Or possibly they did, dude. Don't fucking cave that easy. Fight for your right to be correct. Yeah.
I just have to understand that vegetarians and Buddhists are different people.
They are different people.
One without the other.
Yeah, though a lot of them do have crossover, we'll say.
That Venn diagram has a weird middle section.
Back at school, Lisa's having a little bit of fallout, and her brother's kind of having to deal with it. The bullies are like, "Hey, Simpson, I hear your stupid sister dumped Christianity."
Who cares?
I'll tell you someone who cares. He's got long hair, works as a carpenter, has a lot of crazy ideas about love and brotherhood.
His name's Gunner, and he's dating my mom sometimes. He buys us beer.
I thought Kearney was dating your mom.
Hey, she came on to me.
Get him! And all of the bullies attack Kearney, along with Bart, who just joins in for fun.
I don't know why, but seeing Bart punching one of the bullies that's usually punching him, it was very satisfying because how happy he was.
It's gratifying.
He was kind of like, he was bonding with the bullies.
I agree. And out in the backyard, of the Simpsons home, we see that Lisa is now planting a tree. It's a Bodhi tree for her to meditate under so she can find inner peace.
Honey, was this about some boy at school who doesn't like you?
No.
Good. I'm just saying that any boy who doesn't like you is not worth your time.
And you can tell Lisa's very agitated by the fact that Marge assumes this is about a boy, and she decides to start to meditate, and let it go or whatever. And she does the classic and says some other words that I don't know.
Padme. Looks like Padme from Star Wars.
That's right. I started to say that, and I'm like, it seems wrong. Marge's like, "Oh, you're getting a bath tonight."
All right, and then we cut back to the church. I mean, we got all this renovation.
We're actually at the church board meeting, and it's Burns in front of that council that we saw earlier. Burns announces that church revenues are up 1,073%, but he's keeping the money for himself, and he tosses a smoke bomb, TMNT2 style, onto the floor. But unfortunately, Burns doesn't quite move ninja fast because he's not able to escape in the amount of time that the smoke sizzles, which is a while.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Fine, here, take it," and throws a wad of cash on the desk.
Yeah,
so at least he wasn't completely evil. We give him some money.
Moving on to our next action, or next agenda, Marge Simpson's devil daughter.
She's not a devil. I just don't know what to do.
Well, Christmas is coming.
Yeah, and Santa doesn't leave presents under the Bodhi tree. Wink, wink.
He kind of does a
tap,
wink.
Tap.
You think we can bribe her back with Christmas?
Marge, you can save more souls with roller skates and easy bake ovens than with this 2,000-pound page sleeping pill.
Then with this 2,000-page sleeping pill, it's the Bible he's holding up. And so we see Operation Xmas reminds us of how good it is. No, I messed that. Operation Xmas remind of how good it is.
Neither one of us can talk today.
No, it's a rough day to be a podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And the Simpsons are going all out with trying to remind Lisa about Christmas. They've got the decorations up. They're caroling under the tree. They've got a little dog that sings or barks to the tune of Jingle Bells.
They try to put the angel on the tree that she's meditating in front of, and it starts barking like Homer.
Yeah. Marge bakes Christmas cookies, but then like when Lisa walks by and is like, oh, those smell good, she's like, oh, but you're no longer a Christian. So she throws them away, leading Bart to start eating out of the trash and being like, trash cookies, before going, oh, I think I might have accidentally eaten a dog food lid.
When he first started coughing with holding his heart, I thought he was actually about to have a heart attack, like he was telling Homer in previous scene.
All the cookies and bacon and sausage.
Butter and bacon and sausage.
Yeah. They even do like a caroling center or a caroling session down in the living room. They're waiting on her to come around the corner, and they're like a 1 and a 2 and a 3. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas.
We wish
you
a Merry Christmas. If
you don't know this song, then you must be really young.
Or not Christian, or Santa celebrating.
I was like, I'm pretty sure even if you don't celebrate those, you know what Merry Christmas is.
Feliz Navidad. Either way, they greet Lisa, who is just coming down for a glass of water.
Oh, well, you do have a present under the tree. Guess no one told Santa you were a Buddhist.
Well, Santa can take it back because I'm not ruled by material desire. Is that a pony? We can see literally what's shaped like a pony wrapped in Christmas paper with the muzzle hanging out.
I don't know what Santa left you. I just know his name is Clip Clop and he loves sugar.
Lisa, we love you and we're not trying to put any pressure on you. Except she's literally nudging Maggie to Lisa with her foot, and Maggie like comes over with a candy cane.
Aww.
She takes the candy cane, and Reverend Lovejoy is weirdly peeking through the living room. Lick it. Lick it.
No.
Oh, no. Our daughters run away on Christmas Eve. And,
it's Christmas?
And yeah, exactly. Like, surprise, Christmas time. We see the pony present wrapping paper tear open, revealing that it was actually Ralph in the front half of the horse costume.
More sugar, please.
And Homer's just like bags in the kitchen before Milhouse burst out of the ass of the horse is like, all right. And they both run into the kitchen.
Not looking good for Christmas, Miles. We might not make it.
Lisa runs back to the Buddhist temple where she previously found solace. She sees Lenny, Carl, and Richard Gere all there, and she's so upset because her family tried to trick her into celebrating Christmas.
You know, we are meditating.
And much like a recording in progress sign, we see a meditation in progress sign, and Lisa's very embarrassed, and she apologizes.
Oh, that's all right. I was only about to achieve enlightenment, but who'd want that?
And we cut over to Lenny, who's like, who likes short shorts?
I like short shorts.
And Kira's like, those guys are way off.
Maybe not, if that's what enlightenment is.
Yeah, maybe that's how, you know what, Richard? I don't know that you understand Buddhism as much as you think you do. Short shorts are what enlightens those folks. But He goes on to help Lisa find her way. Anyway, Lisa, your family didn't have to trick you. Buddhists respect the diversity of other religions as long as they're based on love and compassion.
What?
It's true. So why don't you go home? I'm sure your family really misses you.
I can really celebrate Christmas?
You can celebrate any holiday you want. And you know, my birthday is August 31st.
Oh, I'll send you an email greeting card.
Sweet. So Lisa heads back to her family. Mr. Gere will spend Christmas with his daughter Hannah, he says. And they'll be doing each other's hair. Lenny and Carl spend the day with Mo to keep him from accidentally killing himself. There's a very dark joke right here where Carl pulls out a noose and is like, he's going to have a hard time without this.
Yeah, we are getting so dark on Mo this season. It was a quick turn, Miles.
It's kind of been building for a while. It's always been there.
I guess. He's just more angry than pouty until the last few episodes.
Maybe. I don't know. I think it's been there.
Okay.
The Simpsons family is still in the search for Lisa. Homer comes back carrying Santa's little helper, and he's like, I did it! I found our dog! Now our Christmas is complete.
We were looking for Lisa.
And Bart runs in, I thought we were caroling. So it turns out not everybody's on the same page. Marge decides she's going to need the Springfield police to help, but right when she starts to call, she notices that Lisa is actually sleeping under the Christmas tree. Why she wouldn't just go home and go to her room, I'm not quite certain, but she made herself a little gift, I suppose, for the family.
You came back.
Yeah, I wanted to spend Christmas with you guys.
So you're back on the winning team?
No, I'm still Buddhist, but I can worship with my family, too.
So you're just going to pay lip service to our church?
Uh-huh.
That's all I ever asked.
Marge makes a promise that she'll pray double hard to cover for Lisa. She and Lisa together go into the kitchen for some Christmas cookies that she had previously thrown away, making that very sweet. And on the way, Lisa starts asking about that pony, and Marge just tries to change the subject.
It's like, so make with the pony, Mom.
And that actually brings us to the end of our third act. Over the closing theme, we see it's like a centaur version of the Simpsons theme playing over the closing credits.
Yep. And that's the end of that chapter.
Really that act. But yeah, that brings us to the end of our third act. And to the end of this episode, She of Little Faith. Richie, is there anything else that you or that book of yours want to talk about?
Yeah, I'm still really glad that we had a good bounce back episode after last week's. I hope they continue that trend. And I'm always happy when it's a Lisa episode that makes you feel really good. It's just, I guess I'm still trying to pay her back for all the times I hated her episodes as a child. It's a strong word. How I didn't enjoy her episodes about Lisa when I was a child. But again, looking back and doing these reviews each and every week, there are definitely a lot of good Marge and a lot of good Lisa episodes. You just kind of forget them because of the shenanigans of the other two. But this was a very fun episode. And like, when you think about it, outside of Homer building a massively huge rocket that he wouldn't be allowed to build, nothing really happens in this episode. Like, it's a more of a mental thing than it is on a physically there's stuff going on thing.
I mean, the church blows up and Lisa changes religions, but I think I see what you're saying.
A flock of seagulls fly by. That's about it. Okay, Austin Powers. So yeah, just not a lot of stuff happens, and it's still a really enjoyable episode. And I kind of like that you can see something where they don't have to go to outer space to have a good time, kind of thing.
Sure, I would agree with that. I will also point out that on this episode, they talked about the process of it. And I mentioned that Al Jean had the idea that Lisa would become Buddhist. The writer of the episode, Bill Freiberger, was the one that had the idea to have Homer and Bart doing the model rockets together. They combined those. But this episode had so many ideas pitched for it. It was a very popular episode in the writer's room. They came up with a lot of stuff. That the initial draft of the script was 106 pages and had to be cut down tremendously. Though there are many, many comedians and comedic writers that will point out that is usually the best place to work from, because you're going to find your funniest and best stuff when you have a lot and have to, trim it down to a little type of thing. But that did also lead to an interesting discussion on the commentary where they talked about how the way to really make it into a writer's room is to write a spec script. And at one time, there was no show more popular to write a spec script for than The Simpsons. I mean, we know that from when we reviewed Billy Hensley's spec script on our 300th episode, a few episodes back now, like, I don't know, about 2-3 months ago, 11. I would say. Yeah, there you go. But it was Al Jean who pointed out, and several of the other writers agreed that by this time, writing a Simpsons spec script was actually considered a really bad idea. For one, it had just been done so many times, it was becoming hard to be original. And for two, it just didn't really show off the diversity that's needed for a television writer. And you were much better off writing for a show at this time. Like they listed The Office and 30 Rock. Because if you could write for either of those shows, you would definitely be able to handle a show like The Simpsons and an animated 20-minute or 30-minute program. But being able to write for a live action show is considered a much better way of getting your foot in the door back at this time. But it was an interesting conversation that they had.
We're talking about at the time of the commentary, though, right?
Yeah, at the time of the commentary. So that would have been like circa like 2007, 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere
that makes
some
more sense.
Yeah. Last thing I will say is we get one last little tribute to the Christmas episodes of past, because Maggie is seen wearing her original starsuit design, which is the first clothing that we ever see her wearing in the Simpsons pilots. Simpsons roasting on an open fire. She's wearing that at the end of this episode, and that's just a nice little fun bow to tie this thing all up with. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we appreciate the ones that contribute on Patreon even more than the rest.
But not so more that we, don't care about the people that don't do that, because we love each and every one of you. Are you confused yet? Good. You can follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off. You can follow myself at TheWiz_Kid23. But most importantly, you can follow our show. If you didn't know, that's at Best Darn Diddly. It is DIDDLY.
Richie and I will be back again soon. We definitely have some Best Darn Everythings in the works, some stuff that we've been talking about that will be sprinkled into this season. So if you were feeling grateful that we didn't have to put up with those anymore, you're wrong. They're still coming. But the next episode of The Simpsons we'll be reviewing is Brawl in the Family.
We really hope that you at least pay lip service to our podcast.
That's all we can ask. And until next time, be cromulent to each other.